municipality level things, do you have to deal with provincial, national educational bureaucracies?
We're just starting to. So in China, the final high school exam is called the Gaokao, and there is an English element, but it's a written English element, and the talk is that there will be a spoken element in the next 3 to 5 years. And if you want to build $1 billion business, you have to go for, you cannot do this off the back of these other deals. This is automatic IELTS, automatic Gaokao, things like that. And that's what we're starting to pitch for at the moment, is just find out who's the decision maker. We've actually found her. She's a British lady that does the English curriculum for the entirety of China. And what do we have? What would we have? What would they have to see for us to be able to, first of all, pitch for it, and second of all, actually get it? And that is a lot of drinking. So it's starting, but it's a 3 to 5 year plan.
Yeah, question. Is there any strange differences between the culture of negotiation between a Western negotiation setting and a Chinese negotiation setting?
Chalk and cheese? Absolutely polar opposites.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of the executives are Western educated, LSE, Stanford, MIT, whatever, there's a lot more in Western business culture. There's a lot more openness and willingness to, here's the product, here's the price, all right, what's our margin, cool, we'll move forward with it. In China, Ken, our advisor, basically said, look, it's going to take you a few years, patience, we'll get there, but it just takes a lot longer. And I mentioned it briefly before, but we've been tossed around from VPs to founders to product managers. You just get bounced around to one another. We had a pilot with New Oriental. It's a Xingdong Fund. It's one of the largest company in China by market cap. We did a pilot with them in 2015, and it took from delivery of the pilot to the eventual firm no, 4 months. It was the no, yes, oh, interested, can you do this? Talk to this other product manager, left, right. It was just all over the place, as opposed to no, that doesn't work for us. So I think there's a lot more. If you've ever done cultural study, the context of the culture is quite high, and trying to work through that and actually figure out what's being said, and if they're genuinely interested, is interesting. With for example, Zoye, they said they wanted to do a pilot, and we said, okay, is this bullshit or not? We don't know. So 2 weeks later, we asked for more data and more annotated data, and they gave it to us, which told us that yes, they actually want to do a deal.
So that was the quicker way of knowing if they're interested or not, is asking for them to do something in return. And if they're not interested, then they won't do it.
Yeah. Nick has generally structured all his deals now that they have to give him some data to help train his models.
And it was a laborious target. It was hard for them. They had to go and spend money to do this. And if they're not like, oh no, they'll come up with an excuse and palm it off and whatnot. But if they're genuinely interested, they come back and say, we'll get it to you in a week, and it actually turns up in a Baidu or a Baidu storage box or a link.
Culturally, is there a tendency to not want to offend, and so they'll say yes and mean no?
Yeah,
yes.
I think. Yeah, one of the key elements of Chinese culture, and I don't want to make any assumptions or offend anyone, but I think one of the key elements of Chinese culture is saving face and the fear of loss. So if you say no, then you reject. I don't, to be honest, I don't quite understand, but yes, sometimes they will say yes when it's a no, which is why you have to test and actually probe it and say, how interested are you? What can we ask for that's not cash? But to judge how intrigued and how interested they really are. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Do you feel that your age was a bit of a problem, that you were too young? As in, in Chinese culture, perhaps seniority would play a role. In San Francisco, you would be the wunderkind, but is that the same in China?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And now, not so much. I think verbally I can hold my own for the most part with C-suites now and whatnot. Initially, I didn't even own a proper suit. I used to shave. I looked, I literally would walk in a room looking 16 with my dad's old business shirt, and it doesn't. They can tell, right? These guys are wearing $10,000 tailored suits, and they look at you go.
So there's a suit culture?
Not particularly. I think a lot of these very successful Chinese people will just walk around in a pair of jandals and a pair of tracksuit pants and a shirt, and they're worth $100 million. But you got other guys that dress, in a nice tailored suit, and you can't tell. They'll sit next to you on the train, and they're worth, they run a $500,000 fund, and you can't tell. So it's, and meeting VPs and VPs of New Oriental walking in a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. And, hey, your department runs 1.4 billion in revenue, and you're wearing a t-shirt. Like
I'm just in Silicon Valley right now, and when I wore a suit, everybody thought I was the limo driver. So
yeah.
So exactly opposite.
Yeah, you can't tell. It's
Okay.
And just a question on location. You're out in Haidian.
Yeah.
Why?
So Haidian's the northwest corner of Beijing, the area, and in Zhongguanchan is where all of the education firms are. So I used to ride my scooter to the meetings. It was all within riding distance.
You didn't take your scooter into the meeting, did you?
No. That's it. So all of the firms in Beijing, apart from Ichizoye, which is on in Chaoyang in the eastern side, all within 2 or 3 kilometers of each other. It's quite incestuous little area, and there's lots of investors there. There's the Angel Way, all the co-working spaces are all in this sort of tight knit area.
You're just with the you're with the you just go up to university.
Yeah.
On 7.
Yeah.
Ring road 7.
Yeah, up there. So you've got like Tsinghua, Beida or PKU, Peking University, Bill.
Also Beijing University.
Yeah.
They're the same Asian university.
Yeah, Beida, yeah.
So, question?
I have a question. Did you ever meet Unicorn?
Who, sorry?
Unicorn is the CEO and the founder of Qigong Fund.
No, he was in the Gen Fund office when I was there. So he started Gen Fund, or was one of the main backers. He was in the office when I had the meeting with Gen Fund. Yeah, I think he's sort of god status in China.
Actually, it's a question. Has the startup ecosystem, this is a big word we use here, ecosystem, where everyone's lovely to each other in Sydney, has that been of any use to you in Beijing?
No. No. Everything that we've got has been brute force and ignorance. I think there's a lot of in every startup ecosystem, but I think there's a lot of people that aren't perhaps genuinely about startups and more about promoting themselves and things like that, as opposed to actually building a business. And not that it's worse in China than anywhere else, but in China it's done. I don't even bother anymore. I haven't pitched once for this business for an investment, and I won't. That does come from 3 years in the space and my list of investors that I keep up to date with everything. But I wouldn't pitch for investment. We know who our investors are, we know who our partners are, and that's just sitting on a computer for a month straight, figuring out who they are, how we get to them, what time do they leave the office so you can happen to leave at the same time and things like that. So, yeah, things like that.
Have government restrictions eased a bit over the years?
It's really interesting. Just the other day, one of our main concerns is moving capital out of China. They just raised the tax on that. I thought it was about 11% gross. So that's definitely a big issue. So we're doing our deals via Hong Kong. There are restrictions on, for example, educational content. So we're technology. We don't actually do content. We just do technology, right? But if we were doing content, all of that has to be approved and listed by the government. things like that. Like to have a website hosted in China, to have Chinese servers, you need an ICP license, which takes a few months and costs, I don't even know, it's like 20,000 RMB, so $4,000 or $5,000. To register a company is 4 months, about $4,000 to register a company in China. It varies from province to province. It's an interesting place to work around all of that, and it does make it difficult for Western companies to enter the market. For example, you can never have your own Chinese entity. It has to be a natural Chinese person, or you do a WFOE via Hong Kong. And then out of there, but again, that's another $3,000 to $5,000 at least initially, and then $2,000 a year to maintain, plus accounting costs, and you actually have to be in Hong Kong to open a bank account and things like that. So government regulations are tight and getting a bit tighter at the moment, but there are lots of ways around it. There are lots of people working around it, whether it's walking cash across the border into Shenzhen, or doing a WFOE, or paying KWM $200,000 to set them up an entity that loops around with different jurisdictions and works. I'm glad I'm not a lawyer. I'm glad I'm not, but it does make it very interesting. And the visa issues, nightmare, absolute nightmare. If I'm a startup, the only way I can stay in China for up to a year is I have to get a Z visa, Z-type visa, which is a working visa. And they do all the medical tests and all that, which is fine. But I can only stay for a year and have to have an actual job and a real salary. As a startup, I can't give myself that. And without a Chinese entity, I can't give myself that. So I have to leave the country every 60 days. So I go to Tokyo or to Korea or to Hong Kong, and have to spend money doing that at a time and whatnot. So yeah, it is a hassle. But
it's all comparison, mate. Like I got married in China a few years ago, and many years ago now, and I had to stand naked in front of the health committee of the Chang'an district. Literally had to stand naked and answer the questions from the assembled doctors as to why I was suitable to marry a Chinese citizen. So it felt much easier.
I actually have a question. How important do you think it is to speak Chinese in order to succeed in China?
Now that I'm learning Chinese, I'm actually taking lessons. I wish I'd done it in high school and continued to study. Particularly, it's the century of China now. I wish I'd studied it earlier. I think it's absolutely key, from telling the taxi driver where to go to be using Baidu Maps and being able to type in the pinyin of the address because Google Maps don't work. That has ended in a lot of late meetings because you get lost, you have no idea, you can't talk to the taxi driver. So from a personal point of view, absolutely, like imperative, like you need to learn Chinese. From a business point of view, to be able to understand what they're saying on the other side of the table while playing dumb gives you extra time for your negotiator to negotiate, gives you time to think. That's pretty handy as well. That is, now I can sort of get 25% of the conversation, what they're talking about, and to actually sit there and go, alright, they've said no, this is no value here, my parents aren't going to pay for it, I've got 5 seconds, what can I come up with to come back and keep the conversation going. I think that's really important as well.
Okay. And I think a lot of the attention right now is focused on the US with Silicon Valley and whatnot. How do you look at that? I mean, obviously you're in China, so I guess you're a little bit biased, but how do you see China as an alternative to the US?
My next business will be in the US. So but I think it depends on the business.
Yeah.
For English education, it's a no-brainer to go Asia, Southeast Asia, China, and then Latin America and Africa. There's no market globally is doubling in 5 years. It's huge, no-brainer. For someone like SafeSite, they didn't kick any goals in Australia really comparatively, and their business wouldn't have worked in China, but they went to America and they've just raised $5 million or something, huge amount of money, and they're doing very, very well. I think it depends on your business. For a standard SaaS business, like DocuSign or something like that, if Chinese, I wouldn't go to China. Wouldn't even consider it because it's too competitive. There's too much money floating around. It's just a different way of doing business. Yeah, for the most part, I think